One other story that my father told me, on Lexington Avenue, there was a window, a cage. You walk in, you set the window, and people could look at it, walking by, like Saks Fifth Avenue does or something. And he had done a window to look like a Salvador Dali painting. One day, he's in the store, the door opens up, and it's Salvador Dali who walks into the store. And my father walks towards him to greet him because he knew who he was, but he turns left and goes behind the counter, as Salvador Dali does, and opens the cage and climbs into the window without asking, without saying a word, and changes it. And then he gets out, he closes the gate, and he yells to the space, to the people in halting English or accented English, if you're going to do it right.
I love that.
And leaves. And that was it.
Benztown President Dave Chachi Dennis loves radio and all of his radio friends.
Hey, Chachi.
Hey, everybody.
Because Chachi loves everybody.
He's spent more than 2 decades building one of the most respected production music libraries in the world. And here's the twist. He started with 0 music rights experience. What he brought instead was something rarer. The instincts of a seasoned operator, the curiosity of a lifelong learner, and the deep belief that composers and libraries should be fairly compensated while delivering clients the most comprehensive production music offering ever assembled. His career has never followed a straight line, and that's exactly why it works. From running the oldest chemist and perfumer in America, to producing landmark television for Lifetime and PBS, to co-founding a direct marketing enterprise. He's built, scaled, and transformed businesses across industries. And since 2001, under his leadership, APM Music has grown into a global sync licensing powerhouse, serving clients across virtually every medium imaginable. Today, I get to sit down with a true industry builder, a champion of composers, and the driving force behind APM Music, the one and only Adam Taylor.
Hey, Chachi.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I was wondering who you were talking about with all those compliments, It's like,
No, it's truly, I've gotten to know you over the last year and a half. And honestly, you are one of the most fascinating people I have met. And it's been a highlight of the last 18 months, getting to work with you and know you better. And I'm really excited to have you on the show. Fill me in a little bit about growing up.
Well, let's see. Born in New York City, Manhattan, and my parents moved to the suburbs when I was 5 years old, Mamaroneck, New York, for those who know where that is, Westchester County, and I decided to go with them. So I grew up in Mamaroneck and spent my formative years there and had a lot of friends, great place to grow up. Then I went to college in Worcester, Massachusetts, and studied at WPI, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, and did a bit of my philosophy minor at Clark University. And then after school, I went back to Manhattan, started to work for my father. My family owned a business that you mentioned, Caswell-Massey, oldest chemists and perfumers in the U.S. It was founded in 1752 and had always been passed down on an apprenticeship basis. And my uncle started working for the Caswells as a young boy in the earlier 1900s. And then they bought the business later, about 20 some odd years later. Then I went into it after college and ended up running it and owning it with my brother and father and uncle. And that was really what kind of gave me my start in business.
Sounds like you were a very bright kid. You go to the Worcester? I never know. Worcester. Okay, I always mess that up. Polytechnic Institute. And you studied physics and philosophy. So were you a studious student or child?
Oh, I wouldn't say I was that studious. For me, I think college was more of a social experience. I had made great friends. I came out of my shell. I felt like I was a little bit shy beforehand, a little bit of a sheltered life. And I met kids from all over the place and all kinds of different backgrounds and interests. So I really grew as a person, I think, in college. And I did learn physics, and I loved philosophy. I think I ended up loving philosophy more than physics. I actually never graduated. I quit like 6 months short. And,
no kidding.
I just didn't, my heart wasn't in it anymore. and I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. And, some people really know what they want at that age or at any age, Some people even younger, I didn't. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. So
those are the most interesting people. But I'm fascinated by both of those topics. I'm actually reading Walter Isaacson's biography on Einstein right now, and 99% of physics is over my head. But I actually think that physics and philosophy do overlap to some degree. While they're wildly different, I do find physics to be somewhat philosophical, if that makes sense.
Well, I would agree with that. They're both metaphysical. They both go to first principles.
Yeah, yes. Fascinated by both subjects. And as we dive into this, I can see why you're such an interesting person just to be around, to have that type of knowledge base. It's not something I come across very often, and love to talk at some point even deeper about that. So when you're in school at this point and you're trying to figure it out, your father's a successful businessman and has operated, as you had mentioned earlier, Caswell-Massey. How long had he been running the company at that point?
My uncle and my father bought the business in 1936, and so I joined in the 70s, so it was a long time that they had it. When they bought it, we had one store, didn't have a mail order business, manufactured some products, including the cologne we used to make for George Washington. But
that's unbelievable. President Washington.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Called number 6. The legend is that he didn't like the first 5 versions. So,
So that you had a number 6 before Chanel had a number 5?
Oh, yeah. 200 years before or something like that, whatever,
That is wild. At that point, did you grow up around, and I guess, are you in a factory? Is this where this is manufactured? And I'm sorry, I've never actually interviewed or spoken to anyone that's been part of a perfumer before. And so are you part of that process as a kid? Were you running around there with your siblings when you were younger?
I'd go to the warehouse, the manufacturing, this was not a huge business. This was not Chanel. This was not Revlon. We didn't have large factories. A lot of the stuff was handmade. Of course, soaps were made in a factory and things, but there was a lot of stuff that was actually done in a structured warehouse that we had in Greenwich Village. So I used to go down there, and also we had a pharmacy at 48th and Lexington in Manhattan, built into what is now the Intercontinental Hotel, was Caswell-Massey. That building was built in 1928. This is before my father owned it. Was the first tenant in the hotel. So I used to go to the store. My father primarily worked in the store in those days. There was a pharmacy in the back, and so he would have me make pills. So he would give me, there was powder, and then we would have these gelatin capsules, and I'd have to stuff them and fill them and everything, and then put them into a bottle and put them on a shelf. And literally it wasn't until years later that I found out that all he did was throw them out. Because there was no way he was going to sell somebody something that a kid made, shoving some powder. It was like lactose or something or other. And I felt so productive,
I'm sure.
And,
so did you think about maybe becoming a pharmacist at that age?
No, I had no interest. No interest.
That's hilarious. So your father had you compounding pharmaceuticals at an
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That sounds like a really interesting childhood, though. Was there pressure from your father and your mom to join the business? Is that something they had planned for you or wanted for you?
No, never mentioned it, never asked about it, which in a way is striking. Like, he never said, hey, if you're interested in coming into the business, you can. He never said that you can't come into the business. It just didn't come up. I just think because they encouraged me to be who I was and follow my interests. And if I had a natural interest for that, that would have come up. I would have said, hey, I really want to do this. But after college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I could work in the store. So I worked in the store. I met really interesting people. I mean, that store was well known, and famous people would come in. And probably my favorite was Margaret Mead, the anthropologist. I met a lot of celebrities, from Bianca Jagger to Dave Mason to Rex Harrison and Katharine Hepburn, and all kinds of people that would come in all the time. I love reading Margaret Mead, Truman Capote. I mean, these are people you're actually waiting on them and having a conversation with them about personal care products. Do you need this shampoo or this lotion or this or that? It was really quite a lovely experience.
At that point, were you intimidated, or you naturally you're very communicative and obviously a great speaker when you were at that age and Truman Capote comes in to pick out cologne? Was that nerve-wracking or it just came natural to you?
I don't remember being intimidated. I mean, there are certainly people I have met that I've been intimidated about, but not in the store. I felt very comfortable. It was a great environment, and people were, they weren't on guard, or on their guard when they were coming into a store to buy some personal care products. They wanted to talk about the stuff. So, and I knew what I was doing. I learned all the products, and I knew how to recommend it and ask questions and things.
The layout of the store, was it more like I guess today, traditional, you go and you see all the perfumes and colognes at Bloomingdale's or wherever, or was this more behind the counter and you would actually be kind of going back and forth more like a pharmacy?
It was not like a traditional pharmacy. The overall store was about 1,600 square feet, so it wasn't huge, but it wasn't small, and it was wide and deep. So it's like a square shape, really, and there were 2 levels. You had to go up 3 steps to get to the second level. We had wooden and glass counters with products on them, and then products in them, and then behind there were these big, huge glass and wooden cabinets, sculptured cabinets that were done in the 1920s by a family from Italy who used to do the insides of ocean liners, that was filled to the, all the way up with all kinds of products. So there were some that you could just take on the counter, and then some you had to go behind and get stuff.
It sounds like it must have been beautiful. Do you have any pictures?
Yeah, I mean, I can send you one, or you can actually just type in Caswell-Massey store, Lexington Avenue, and it'll come up. It was a beautiful store. It's not there anymore, unfortunately. The more recent owners decided to let it go. And that area on Lexington Avenue was not what it used to be. And so more of had it been on Melrose, on Madison or Fifth Avenue, it would probably still be there in its original configuration. I do want to just say one other story that my father told me.
Please.
This was before my time, but on Lexington Avenue, there was a window, a cage. You walk in, you set the window, and people could look at it, walking by, like Saks Fifth Avenue does or something. And he had done a window to look like a Salvador Dali painting. One day, he's in the store, the door opens up, and it's Salvador Dali who walks into the store. And my father walks towards him to greet him because he knew who he was, but he turns left and goes behind the counter, as Salvador Dali does, and opens the cage and climbs into the window without asking, without saying a word, and changes it. And then he gets out, he closes the gate, and he yells to the space, to the people in halting English or accented English, if you're going to do it right.
I love that.
And leaves. And that was it. And unfortunately, my father didn't think to take a picture of it. So, which was really too bad. I mean, can you imagine a before and after of that? It would have been part of history,
Yeah, that is incredible. And back then, unfortunately, we didn't have cameras as readily available either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You probably didn't have a Brownie in the store and a Brownie camera for those who remember that,
So you leave school and you come back. Do you pretty quickly become the president of the company?
No, I worked in the store for 3 years and then moved to the warehouse/office. And then my father came with me, and we started, my father had started a catalog business. We were importing products from all over the world, personal care products. And so I went to work with him in terms of working with these foreign companies to get the products in, identify new products, work on contracts, work on the mail order business. I helped him write the catalog. It was a very beautiful award-winning catalog, all line drawings, no photos. And I don't have one here, unfortunately, to show you, but I can send you some photos. Numerous awards for this catalog. Great copy, which my father wrote many times. We also had a couple of people who helped him from time to time. So I was in the office, and then a number of years later, I was there for 17 years. I ran it for about 10 years. So I was not the president for the first 7 years.
When your father and uncle decide to hand you the reins to the company, you're still very young. Here's a company that's been around for well over 200 years, which very few people ever have the opportunity to run anything like that. That's certainly a lot of tradition. I mean, to be the perfumer for George Washington is truly remarkable. What did that feel like? Was it an immense amount of pressure put on your shoulders, or did you feel relatively comfortable because you had grown up around it?
There wasn't really a moment. We were a family business. It was kind of something that evolved, and a lot of it happened because during time when my uncle was out for a period of time, his wife was ill and ultimately, unfortunately, passed away, and my aunt. So it just we kind of grew into it. And typical in family businesses, there were tensions between the different people and stuff, and with my father and my uncle, and us and my brother and me versus my uncle. And there was I think there were challenges. It was interesting, and I was able to do a lot of the things that I wanted to do. But you're talking about somebody much, much younger, me, and my uncle was much, much older, and you're bound to have generational differences in how you view things and what you want to do. And, and truthfully, I wish that then I had the skills that I have now. I've learned a great deal. Looking back, I can see a lot of the mistakes that I made and a lot of the things that probably my uncle wasn't very happy with that I couldn't even listen to, but he was probably right about some things, wrong about other things. So it's human beings working together.
Would you say the foundation that you had at Caswell-Massey, well, obviously very different than in some ways different than what you do today at APM, obviously different businesses, but did it set you up and give you a foundation that you've been able to apply in your work today?
Yes, absolutely. The way that I look at what my career has been is that I run intellectual property companies. And so how do you extract value out of intellectual property? If we look at Caswell-Massey Cosmetics, yes, but formulas, stories, history, photos, that's what we were exploiting. You have to figure out how do you get value out of those things. And it's very much the same thing with music. And Caswell-Massey was at the top level of the industry in terms of the quality of its product, and APM is absolutely at the top level in terms of the creativity and quality of the product that we have. So how do you market top shelf stuff? I feel that I learned a great deal, and I had really good advisors. There was a guy on my board of directors at Caswell-Massey who I learned so much from, and he was like a walking MBA class. And I feel like between that and what I learned from my family and my brother and others whom I worked with, that I was able to take that forward and do that. So
it's truly a remarkable experience and an opportunity. It sounds like you thrived in it while challenging, and certainly the family dynamic and just the stress and pressures that come with running a business to step into that at such a young age is a tremendous amount of pressure. And says a lot about you and certainly your character, but also I think your strength. I believe in, being a business owner myself, I don't think I could do today when I was your age, and you were probably running something much bigger. And so it really is remarkable. You sell the business in 1989. Was that something that the family and everyone was on board with, or were there some conflicts there and some people wanting to keep it versus selling it?
I think there were, it was a combination. There were conflicts and disagreements about what the path forward should be, and it ended up that the best thing to do would be to sell it. It was hard for me and for my brother too, but I didn't know what else I was good at. This is what I had done since college, and this was my life. Letting go of it was not an easy thing to do. And
I'm sure.
that was challenging, but it had to be done. And there just was not enough agreement on the path forward in terms of vision about how it would run. Could we optimize the value of the business ourselves, or would that be best done by somebody else? And do we take the money and run and go do different things with our lives? And at the end of the day, I'm very grateful that that's what happened. And because I started to learn much more about myself, I started to figure out how I had value in the world and where I belonged. And one thing led to another and to another and to another. And ultimately, I ended up running APM. And I would not have been here if the path had been different.
Yeah, I totally get that. It goes back to that expression. Sometimes one door's got to shut for another to open. And I don't want to, though, minimize, here was a business that had been in the family for nearly 60 years. And so that becomes a child in a lot of ways. And everyone's poured, or at least a lot of the families poured their heart and soul into that business. And I'm sure it was really emotional. And here you're still very young and trying to figure out your path forward. And you make, in my opinion, a pretty big pivot. You found as a partner a entertainment company. And so after you sell the business, how much downtime was there before you decide to found Goldman Taylor?
I didn't really have much downtime in the sense that I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was a little bit afraid, even though I had some money, I wasn't sure who would hire me and what I would be good at. And a friend of mine, who I'm still very good friends with, had a little home jewelry business, and they were selling, it was very interesting actually, they were selling products to flea market-y kind of stuff, but at hospitals to raise money for hospitals.
Okay.
And they had this very interesting business, and they needed some help getting it all organized. They were making some good money, but it really needed to be professionalized, and they were out in New Jersey. And so I started working with them, and I think I did that maybe 6-9 months, and after a while, I said, well, here I am working in another family business, but this time in a basement of a house in New Jersey, and this is what I want to do. And I ultimately decided it wasn't, and I left. Then I was lucky. I had a good friend who lived around the corner from me, and actually the jewelry thing I did overlapped with the time I was at Caswell-Massey. Of course, the last 9 months of being at Caswell-Massey, I had given up my position as president because we were trying to restructure things for the sale. So, and I advised and all that, but it was good. I had time. So I worked with my friends, and then this other friend said, had a loft around the corner from me. I can't remember exactly. I was probably lamenting to him that I didn't know what I wanted to do. And he said, well, why don't you bring a desk up to my loft? I've got plenty of space. And it was right around the corner from my apartment at Bleecker and Broadway. So I did. And I'm literally sitting there the first day and thinking, well, what am I doing? And my friend Stuart was a producer. So he produced documentaries and other stuff. And I figured, well, then, okay, I'm a producer. But then I said, what's a producer? I had no idea. Never knew nothing about the entertainment business at all. And I figured that a producer must read the New York Times. So I started reading the New York Times. And then I saw an article in there. I thought, wow, this is an interesting article. It was very small, a little blurb, and this would make a great book. And then I thought, you know what? This could be a series of books with a repeating character. And then I thought this could actually be an amazing TV series. And so all that took about 5 minutes. And I walked over to Stuart and said, hey, what do you think about this idea? And he said, that's a great idea. I said, what should I do? And he said, call this agent. And it's somebody that Stuart was working with. And called the agent, introduced myself, told him the idea. And he said, that's a great idea. I said, what should I do? He said, I'll call you back. And 15 minutes later, he calls back and says, will you take a $5,000 option for the idea? Right? I said, I don't know, that doesn't sound like a lot of money for my idea. He said, trust me, it's a lot of money in the entertainment business for an idea like this. And so I took it. They didn't end up getting it made. The people who had optioned it were great, but they had made their name in half-hour shows, half-hour comedy. Three's Company was one of them. And this was an hour-long dramatic show, and I don't know, for some reason it didn't happen. And they did option it for a second year for another $5,000, and it never got made. And to this day, the idea has never been made.
It's sitting on a shelf somewhere.
It is sitting in my head. I did tell my wife about it on our first date, and we ended up getting married, so I credit the story with my marriage, but
so it paid off well.
It did.
Here's your very first crack in the entertainment business, and you already right off the bat, your first swing, you get an option.
Yep. And then right after that, we optioned a book called Leona Helmsley, The Queen of Mean. And we ended up turning that into a TV movie on CBS.
Yeah, she owned the Palace Hotel, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And she and he, Harry Helmsley. And so we optioned that and we sold it. We worked with the big Hollywood producer, Chuck Freeze, and because we didn't know anybody, and we got it sold when Jeff Sagansky was over at CBS, and it got made and got nominated. Suzanne Pleshette, who played Leona Helmsley, got nominated for a Golden Globe and an Emmy, if I'm remembering correctly.
A couple years into this at most, and you already are getting Emmy nominations.
Well, it wasn't me who got the nomination; it was her. But still,
your production was nominated.
Yeah.
How did that transition go? I mean, here going from operating a heritage 200-year-old perfumer to getting into the entertainment business and producing movies and television shows.
I mean, at that time, it felt great. It was like, wow, this is amazing. This is a lot of fun. I did a few other things and worked with the Joseph Campbell estate and did a 10-hour series based on the works of Joseph Campbell. I worked with the Elvis Presley estate and with Stewart and with one other person on created a documentary called Elvis in Hollywood, and it was actually a book, and it's about Elvis's first 4 movies, and there's a bunch of other stuff,
So you have this success, and at this point, are you feeling like this is going to be my path? I've found what I want to do?
Yeah, and then eventually I realized that it was a very biblical thing, feast then famine.
I see.
I found that after a certain point, we had success, but at a certain point, I found it difficult to sell more things, and we were having a run of no success. I was so new to the business, I really didn't know how to parlay this into some huge, first look deal or something like that. Eventually, we needed to move on to some other things. I got back into consumer products for a while, and then had the opportunity to come run APM. And I'm really glad it happened this way, actually.
It's so fascinating. I think you're the only person I've interviewed. Most of the people I interview are certainly entertainment, but mostly radio, a few authors. Your career trajectory is really fascinating to me because you've done so many different things. And so from there, you go on and you now co-found Taylor and Fox Enterprises. And that's essentially a business that partners with doctors and scientists and inventors. It's a direct marketing, patent protected products to consumers company. Did I get that correct?
More or less, yeah. We were meeting scientists who had some form of product or intellectual property that could be turned into a product that we could then market. And so the first thing I did was I created a cream that helped to heal the cracks and fissures of the skin that was based on a cream that we had at Caswell-Massey. And I changed the formula, but it was this basic idea. And it had a great name, and I wish I had kept the trademark on it, but called Extremities.
That is a great name.
It was EXT, capital R, Remedies.
That's great.
And so we sold it on the Home Shopping Network and QVC. And this particular one was an idea that I had inspired by a previous product. This wasn't something brought to me from a scientist. But I worked with a chemist to formulate the product, and then I manufactured it and sold it. And I had a host, and after sometime pretty soon on, she wasn't available. So I was stuck, and I had to go on Home Shopping Network myself. And I was absolutely the worst host that you could possibly imagine. I think I was probably the worst host in the history of Home Shopping Network. I did that once, and I said, I'm never doing this again. And I had somebody else, and that didn't work out. And then I eventually dropped it and got into other things. And then I worked with scientists who had a formula for sunglasses that block the rays that contribute to macular degeneration. So we turned that into a product called sunscreeners. I made the sunglasses in Taiwan and also sold them on TV and a bunch of other stuff. I did an infomercial. Tommy Lasorda was the host. And one of my business partners, Steve Fox, who was married to Marilyn Fox, who was my partner in Taylor Fox Enterprises, played with the Dodgers and was very dear friends with Tommy and ran Tommy's businesses. And so he said, I'll get Tommy to be the host. So Tommy came and
so Tommy hosted the infomercial.
The infomercial, yeah. I don't even have a copy of it. I'm sure it's somewhere. But
we'll have to find that. I love that. Is it around the air? I remember when Tommy also did the Slim Fast commercials.
Yeah, I don't remember if this was before or after. I think this is probably after, but I don't remember exactly.
What was it like working with him? I got to meet him years ago, and I'd heard he could be a little rough around the edges, but that was obviously his manager persona. Was he kind of like that in terms of? I
only met him that one time through Steve, and Steve dragged him there. You could tell he was dragged there to do this. He didn't really want to do it, And I felt like a little embarrassed, I did meet him and talk to him, but I could tell he didn't really want to be there. Yeah. But he did it. He did a great job. He was a true professional when it came to what needed to be done on TV. Did pretty well and eventually died out.
It's fascinating. There is one common thread, other than you, in this journey is IP. So intellectual property is a common thread all the way from the beginning. And as I'm putting that puzzle together, I can really see where you're so passionate and have a great understanding of it. And you're a great, I guess, marketer and promoter of IP, whether that's entertainment or perfumes and colognes or lotions and sunglasses. It's very fascinating. How long were you at Taylor and Fox? And then when did that pivot into where you are now and have been for 20 plus years, almost 25 years at APM?
Taylor Fox probably went on for about 5 years and ended in the mid to late 90s. And because I was making various consumer products and cosmetic products, I was introduced to somebody who had a product that needed to be manufactured and he was in Florida. I started manufacturing this cream for this guy, and it was very, very successful. He was on a shopping network called Shop at Home out of Knoxville. It became, I think, one of the Scripps networks or something, or it became something else. But in any case, it was very successful. It did really well. And I went down to Florida, and my then wife and my kids were very young. We decided to move down to Florida. So we were in Miami area ended up to be about 3 years, and then came back to LA. And I was working with him. I became chief operating officer of a small public company, a NASDAQ small cap company, and I did that. And that was very, very interesting, and did that for a while, and then another company for a year. But then I wanted to get back to New York or LA, and I was offered this opportunity to apply for being the head of APM, and I jumped at it.
And the opportunity, did that come through someone that you knew like at a board level, or it came through just a headhunter? How did that all come to be?
No, somebody on the board who was an old friend of mine, and my ex-wife and me and his wife used to get together all the time for dinners in New York, and he and I were always talking music, and they were always talking art, and I was fascinated by the music business and knew a lot of people in it in New York, even though I wasn't in the music business. He was visiting in Florida. We were sitting on the beach, and I was talking to him about it, and that I was looking for something new. And he said, we own half of a company that maybe you'd be interested. And we talked, and then ultimately they left, and I thought, I'm going to do the research. And I did the research and sent up my resume and went up for interviews, and a few months later got the job. And in June 25th of 2001 is when I started. So this June 25th will be 25 years. So 25 on 25.
Congratulations. I mean, it's
been life-changing.
I'm sure you are a Renaissance man and have these, again, from physics to philosophy to science, chemistry, marketing, sales. I mean, just so many diverse interests. Was music something that you were a fan of as younger in life? Were you an aficionado? I understand maybe not necessarily a musician, but did you like to go to shows, and especially being in New York at the epicenter? So that was something.
Yeah. Well, I was definitely not a musician. I tell people if I wrote two notes, one of them would be wrong. And I can strum the guitar. I played clarinet in elementary school, but I wasn't a natural musician. I don't have a natural feel for music from that perspective. But I did like music. I was very into folk, and then in college, I started getting into harder stuff, got into the New York Dolls and Lou Reed and other things. And obviously at that time, Bowie and Springsteen and Elton John and other stuff. And then came to New York, and I happened to meet a lot of people in the music business. Naturally gravitated towards it. Never thought about going into it, but I was around it a lot. So I had backstage passes to Madison Square Garden and to the Palladium. And I went to, many, many hundreds of concerts and performances of major artists over the years. I saw almost everybody, including Joplin and Hendrix. And the only ones I didn't see were the Beatles, the Doors, the Beach Boys until many, many years later, and and Elvis Presley. Never saw him,
Yeah.
but I was lucky to be able to do that. Yeah.
And what a great time to be in New York. And you obviously had experience dealing with artists, with your entertainment experience at Goldman Taylor, and you knew that part of it certainly had some similarities, and it's adjacent. Obviously, it's part of the entertainment industry. So I'm sure that helped. And I also imagine working, back to Caswell-Massey, where you would have celebrities coming through and working, just as, helping them match them to the right perfume or cologne, probably in some ways was also helpful, because I've always, at least in my side of the business, I think, and I consider myself probably more like you, I can't put two notes together either, but I've always been a massive fan of music and radio in particular and entertainment. And I feel like that takes a slightly different touch when you're working with artists than it does with someone that might be a non-artist, like a scientist, for instance. I'm guessing. I've never worked with scientists, but I remember reading Phil Jackson's book, and some of the things that he had said when you're, managing someone like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, and what that's like, because it is a slightly different, nuanced touch. And I would imagine that helped you in terms of the foundation for taking over APM.
I think the key thing is to feel comfortable with people, even if they're a celebrity or whatever, or a celebrity in their own mind.
Right.
You have to treat everybody with respect, but that goes without saying. But I think you have to be curious. If you're curious by nature, I think that helps to forge relationships, and it doesn't matter if the person is well known or not. I've known many, many well-known people in my life and have had fine relationships, and some I've become friends with, and some just a chance meeting, or a business meeting or something. But it doesn't faze me really.
Let's dig into APM. What was APM like when you took over in 2001, and what were you tasked with at that point?
As I mentioned before, APM was founded in 1983. When I got there in 2001, there had been two previous presidents. I don't think anybody thought it would go this long, including me. And the person right before me, I'd never met him, but he had been there for about 11 years. And I think that from, again, what I've been told from others, his kind of interest was waning, and his instincts were not necessarily keeping up with how a business needed to be run in order to take it to the next level. From what I'm told, he did have a big positive influence on the library business and was essential in making APM what it was when I took over. But it had some pretty old architecture, to say nothing of its systems, not only its systems, but the way people interacted with each other, how the departments were set up, what their focus was, what tools were being given to them. So it seemed like it was time for a change, and the board obviously felt the same way. They weren't seeing the growth, and they were concerned that APM wasn't going to be able to adapt to the things that were coming up.
So you're responsible really for modernizing it and bringing it into the new millennium.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a crazy time, because we're talking, it's just right after the .com era, but everything's going online and things are moving very, very quickly. And certainly the music industry is changing very quickly at that time as well.
Yeah. I mean, when I started, we had a website, but there was no music on it. You couldn't play anything. I remember trying to click on it and couldn't hear anything. And in my first interview, I said, there's something wrong with your website. You should check because the audio files aren't working. It turns out they had never hooked them up. So I remember when I first started, I called the guy who developed the website, and I said, I'm firing you. And he said, why? I said, because the website sucks. And he said,
I appreciate your candor.
He said, oh, thank God, somebody who agrees with me. And the previous guy had not let him do those things. And so he ended up being our web developer. And we've had three websites over the years during my tenure. Each one lasted about 10 years, and then time came to change it sufficiently that we needed a new architecture. And his one lasted for like 11 years from that meeting, and we became very close and did a lot of stuff together. But yes, I had to modernize things. I gave, not everybody had a computer. This guy who was running the company didn't even have a computer in his office. He would lock the fax machine up at a certain time of day, and I don't know, it was kind of strange, and it just wasn't taking the steps that it needed to do to deal with the modern era. And so there was a lot of modernization that was needed. So we built out the website. Then years later, we did it again and did it again. And, now we have a very sophisticated set of algorithms to find music, and we have very deep tagging. We have over 50 million tags on all of our tracks, and we do a lot of data analysis, and we utilize that data. And we have algorithms for search. We have AI search as well. You can toggle between them, and we're using AI tools not for the creation of music, but to help music discovery. So yeah, we're trying to be on the cutting edge. We feel we're the biggest and the best at what we do, but you don't stay the biggest and the best just by saying it. You have to do things all the time. There's this constant need for innovation, and today's world, it's even more so than ever before.
I probably should give a little bit more context. Most of the people that listen to this are industry people and certainly know APM. You're world famous. I just saw the list the other day. I would say half of the movies that were nominated for Academy Awards at least used APM in some way or form. The NFL uses APM. I mean, the biggest of the big use APM. In 2001, when you get there, and obviously modernizing, which is a Herculean effort, because for some of the younger listeners, I remember everything was delivered to us, in the 90s on CD. So our production libraries, we'd have a catalog that we could go through, and you could look up different sounds and so forth. And I'd have to reference it back to CD. It would be, CD 23, cut 17. And that's how you would go and find everything. So putting that audio not only on the internet was a huge, huge deal, and on a website, I should say, but secondly, just building that out. The way that you built architecture at that point was so different than how it's done today. So I could only imagine how big of an effort that was. And then explaining that to the artists, because there was so much distrust at that point with Napster and theft and so forth, and making sure that that's something that could be done safely and didn't, risk the IP being stolen. So I'm sure there was a lot of management, not only from the tech side, but dealing with the composers and then trying to train the producers, the end users, the music directors and music supervisors that were using this. So you're trying to educate them on a new system. That's a lot coming at you, especially, early, first time running a library at that era in time. Is it a much smaller business, I'm assuming, at that point?
Oh, God, yeah. We're like 5, 6, 7 times larger. Don't remember the exact number from that point. Yeah. It's a much larger business. It's a much larger industry. People using library music across the world is much larger than it used to be. And the sheer amount of production that's happening today is more than it ever used to be. When I came in, we had cable, but there was no streaming. It's really changed dramatically. There was no YouTube or TikTok. Well, there was YouTube. YouTube started beforehand, but early days,
Right. And so now you are everything from certainly movies and television, but we're talking corporate videos to social media, radio. It really runs the gamut. So the client base has expanded. How did you market that and grow this into other industries?
We pride ourselves on identifying areas of the business to go after, markets to go after in early stages. So we try to get there ahead of other people. Markets come and go, we did a lot of local radio stations, actually, when I first came. We had a lot of direct deals for a lot of money per station, and then the dollars that were available really dropped down to a point where it really wasn't worth it. Sure. Now we're doing it again, and we have a lot of stations now, and of course we're working with Benztown to take us out to radio, which is great, but there was a time when we just decided we're not going to focus on the radio business. We'll keep the clients we have. If they want to renew, fine. But then we put that effort into cable, and we became very, very strong and dominant in cable. And we've done the same thing in streaming. And now cable is going down, So it goes up and down. I think you just have to follow the market, follow the money,
reading the tea leaves and seeing where things were going.
And look, we've made plenty of mistakes.
That's those are the best lessons usually,
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about some of the acquisitions that you've made over the years with other libraries. What do you look for when you make that type of acquisition? And then also, what are you looking for when you decide to add music? There's no doubt that there's certainly more opportunity in terms of more people using production music, but there is just exponentially more production music being created, more artists out there for sure, but also technology has certainly expanded that. And so I think a large part of this is my assessment of what's made you successful and made the library so prestigious is your ability, not only, I guess, to read the tea leaves and understand the marketplace and to be a great marketer and salesperson, but to also curate. I mean, you're kind of like a Rick Rubin in that perspective and picking out what that right music is. Because if the client comes, to the library and they don't find the right thing, or it's like walking into a high-end department store and it being filled with the wrong merchandise. It can all of a sudden change things very quickly.
Well, I appreciate comparing me to Rick Rubin, but I don't think that I can feel him in the same category as him. He's amazing.
He is. My understanding, though, is he doesn't play an instrument either. So
then we have a lot in common. But he's great, and he's done something very, very special. From an acquisition perspective, very easy. Zero. We haven't made any acquisitions. We don't acquire anything, so everything has been organically built.
Oh, it has.
The growth is organic, yeah. And we represent music. We are a super curator. I mean, we have a few small libraries that we own where we will work directly with composers. But we were set up in '83 to represent music that our owners, which was at the time EMI and ATV, owned. They had library interests. They had a distributor here in the United States they weren't happy with. And in 1983 decided to create a new company. They decided to do it together. And that's how APM got formed. So we were set up from the beginning as a little bit of an unusual animal where we didn't have our own libraries, but we were set up to represent other libraries. And that's mostly true today. Again, we have a small set of libraries that we own, and we work directly with songwriters and composers to put music in there. But essentially, we pick which libraries we want to represent. There were some founding libraries, and they're all the libraries that are owned by Sony and Universal, which are our two owners today. So we have that music, but then there are other libraries. There are third-party libraries that we, over the years, some before me, some since, have chosen to represent, and these are, in my opinion, the world's greatest music libraries. And so because we have this incredible mixture of sources of supply, diversity in the types of music or the interpretation or approach to a particular kind of music is deeply varied. And you could say, I want happy music with cello, and one library will do it one way and another will do it another way. And so you're getting different interpretations of the same kind of thing. So you've got this enormous choice, which I think is part of the reason for our success. And because of the fact that we don't own music, we're not locked into the position of having to have a permanent in perpetuity obligation to that music. We can continually ask ourselves, what are the clients looking for? And that's what we're here to do. We're here to satisfy the needs of clients, and we are very serious about it and spend a great deal of time thinking about what they need, asking them what they need, sending that information to the libraries we represent, and making sure that we get the music that we need.
Understood.
That is really the fundamental core, and we choose to represent those libraries. Now, to supplement that, we've got classical collections that are, some were recorded for the library, but others are record label collections of classical music, and we have rights to those. We also represent the music of the NFL, Major League Baseball, Discovery Network, a couple of the big British networks like ITV and Sky TV. We have the music of the big British production company, All Three Media, and also a whole bunch of archival music that goes back to the earliest days of the 20th century. We probably have the most important archival collection that's out there that can be offered for synchronization into programming.
Did you ever imagine back when your father was having you put together pills that were never being sold, that you would go from that behind the counter there to run one of the biggest production music libraries labels in the world, and be working and negotiating on deals with the NFL. Did that ever cross your mind?
No. Definitely did not. I think it took a while for me to understand my place in the world. I had a kind of a little bit of a sheltered upbringing, intellectual, educated. I think the first opening was going to work for Caswell-Massey, my family business, because it was a very well-known business and because all of these interesting people came in, because we had products from all over the world. I got to see what a kind of a business with a more global view could have, and also that had a place in the culture.
Right. That's a really good point.
I could feel the relationship between the product, the company, and the culture at large. And I very, very much feel that way about APM. It has played a role. We've been in literally millions of productions. We did most of the music for Oprah Winfrey for 20 years. We did most of the music for SpongeBob. We supply a good percentage of ESPN's music. We own the Monday Night Football theme, People's Court, This Week in Baseball, so many different things that the music itself has a place in the culture at large, and being able to feel that you're part of this world, really an incredible opportunity.
If you sit and you watch the credits, which my girlfriend loves to do, it is rare that I don't see APM show up in the credits. I mean, it is truly remarkable. Just most people probably are hearing APM music multiple times a day. They're just unaware of it.
Oh, yeah. It's everybody has heard our music a million times. They just don't know it. And, on TV, you don't get credit for the most part. Feature films, you do. But obviously commercials, you don't. And TV programming, generally, no. But and a lot of the new generation know us as well. We're billions and billions and billions of videos on YouTube with our music in there. Same thing with TikTok. There's a little interesting story where, just to show how things survive and morph and find new meaning for people. There's a track that was written by a British composer in the 1960s. It's in one of our libraries owned by Universal, a library called Bruton. And it was a track we licensed into SpongeBob SquarePants many years ago. And a few years ago, a 20-year-old or so kid from, I think, Virginia took the clip, took the song out, remixed it, sped it up a little bit and remixed it, put it back into the video, put it up on TikTok, and it went viral. And there are now about 8 million videos with that song, and everybody knows the song. It's called Tomfoolery. And if you just type in YouTube SpongeBob Tomfoolery or in TikTok, you'll find it. So anybody listening to this, type in SpongeBob Tomfoolery. I won't embarrass myself by humming it, but you can, you'll know the song. Everybody knows the song. So, that's an incredible thing to have happen,
I love it. I love that story. And somehow we've gotten to SpongeBob. That is how great this has been. What does your day look like at 8 p.m.? What's a typical day for you?
Oh, I just sit and do podcasts all day. That's all. I wish. The days are very, very busy. We're in the office 2 or 3 days a week. Everybody comes in 2 days a week. Some people come in 3 or every day, but mostly we're concentrated on those 2 days, but then we're working out of home. And because of that, there's this incredible reliance on Zoom, obviously. And so there are a lot of Zoom meetings, and it's a little bit different, because when we're in the office, I can walk down the hall, ask somebody something. It's very spontaneous. Oftentimes you have to make an appointment, set in your calendar and then talk and everything. But we've gotten it down to be efficient, but I do have a lot of calls and a lot of meetings and things. And I find that the deeper work, the stuff that really requires thinking, I have to do either at night or on the weekends. And of course, it's difficult, at least for me, to deal with all of the day-to-day things that come up and the people who need me. We've got 90 employees, not including the composers. There are a lot of things that come up that I'm involved with. So there's a constant flow of things. It's very advantageous to be ADD. I'm probably undiagnosed ADD. I love a million things happening at once. Yeah. And I love the triage. I think I'm good at the triage of figuring out what to do and what not to do, or what to do first. So the days are very busy there is planning and strategy. We have strategy meetings, we have planning meetings, we have people present, and then I have to make decisions about things, or I have to hear people out discussing an idea. They each disagree with each other, and usually what I'll say is, you guys work it out. If you end up not agreeing, come back to me.
That's a great leadership tool right there.
Yeah,
I love that.
And then there's just reacting to all of the different things that can happen in a very robust business, in an industry and a world that's constantly changing.
And that is for sure. How does, and I'm sure you're asked this a million times, and at this point it's been kind of a cliche question because I get asked the same thing, but I have to do it. How is AI impacting things in your space in the production music world?
What's AI?
Yeah.
There are many answers to that question. The long-term view is, who knows?
Sure.
My own personal view is that the best music is going to continue to be written by songwriters and composers, human beings, who use all of the tools that are available to them, including AI. And so I think AI can do certain things well, and it'll get better and better. At its various levels of skill set, it's a tool set, and it finds its place in human culture and human society and in work society. So it is certainly going to have changes. It already is to some degree, although I think we're at the very early stages of those changes. Our approach at APM is that AI is a tool, and that we feel it will allow people to do their jobs more productively. Maybe it'll help unleash some creativity. Therefore, they will have more time to do other things. So we have no plans to replace anybody with AI. We have a lot of work to do. There are so many things that we just can't even get to. So if we could get to those using AI and people so that we can feel more caught up and be able to take advantage of those things, because all of those things are going to be either productivity creating or revenue creating, there's going to be a great advantage to having that. On the music creation side, again, we're not accepting AI generative music. Our tagline on our website is human created, human curated. And we're doubling down on that. We believe in that. We want to help support the culture at large and have a keen understanding of the centrality of human beings to the creative experience and to the human experience. So we want to be good partners and respect the social contract, and that's what we are doing. Now, having said that, we are doing certain things. We're using AI, I think I mentioned before, for music discovery. We are using it to, if we don't have stems, which are the parts of tracks, if we don't have them, some of the tracks are archival, they don't exist, we will use AI to create what we call extracted stems. There are audio manipulation tools that are available that we haven't put on yet, but changing a vocal to male to female or vice versa or something else. There are going to be manipulation tools that are not meant to replace the need for the music to have both male and female vocal, but to allow people who are essentially in the mix, they're in the studio, they're right at the moment of needing to make a music decision, that need to make an adjustment to the track. So in order for it to fit its video. So we want to give them the tools in our platform to be able to make those adjustments right on the spot. So we're looking at all of those to be able to do that. Right now, the primary focus is on music discovery. So that includes putting in a prompt and getting a set of results back, being able to modify that prompt, and being able to have a set of tracks that you've created, a playlist or a project or whatever you want to call it, and having the system then suggest other tracks that you hadn't seen. So those are all about unleashing the power of what we already have. We're not interested in creating new copyrights with AI.
We have a very similar philosophy, and I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. It's, staying certainly on the leading edge of what's out there happening, but I believe the future and who's going to win in the future is going to be the companies such as yourselves that are using it thoughtfully to certainly become better at what it is that you do and making your music more accessible and easier to find and more robust, but that the creation is still human-based. And I appreciate you sharing that and giving us some insight. I want to give some compliments to your team. I get to deal with, a lot of companies as you do. And a lot of times you can tell like what companies are just so incredibly well run and some that sometimes just aren't. Your team, man, they are so bright and so well versed. And every time I talk to them, it is really impressive. I hold you guys up to like a Disney type level or, a Nordstrom. I'm really into like customer service, and I've just been the knowledge base and how they handle things. And it really, goes back to your leadership and certainly your style, but your expertise. And I wanted to compliment you on that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Are you, I think I might have this messed up. Are you the vice chair of the PMA or the chair?
I am the chair.
The chair of the Production Music Association. Talk a little bit about that and what you are tasked with, what that association, I should say, is tasked with.
Sure. So the PMA started in the 90s before I got to APM. When I joined, I was soon on the board because of APM being a major player. And then after a number of years, I was elected to be the vice chair. Then after that, the chair. I've been chair for a long time. It's too long, but it's got the recent election we just had. I didn't even vote for myself, but they elected me nonetheless, right? But it's a great organization. The people are really wonderful, and we have a board of 15 people, and it's for the most part, the leading houses in the country, production music companies, but not all. There are some independent, there are a lot of independents. They're the majors, us, Universal, Warner Chappell, and BMG, but there are a lot of other smaller ones. And so we're a variety of different voices. And then we have a very, very broad and deep membership across the entire library industry, both in the United States and internationally. So the mandate is very focused. We're not a lobbying organization per se. We do add to our voice to the National Music Publishers Association and NMPA and other people who are fighting the good fight. We work very closely with organizations who are trying to make sure that human-created works are respected in copyright law by the industry. But the main focus is member-focused. Main purpose, yes, member-focused, where there are three things. One is to create community. Second is to educate. And the third is to help preserve the value and the perception of value of production music. And that's it. We do that through interactions with other people. And so we have more or less every month a kind of like a little town hall, or not really a town hall, it's more of like a coffee hour. And it's online, and anybody who is a member can join. We usually get anywhere from 30 to 50, 60, 70 people on, but on one where we had 100 people on. And again, they're more or less once a month. Different people host it. I do some of them and do others, and a lot of composers and different publishers and stuff. And then once a year, we do a very large thing, the industry gathering. It's called the Production Music Conference. It's in Los Angeles. It's always late September, early October. This year, it's early October at the Universal Hilton. We get anywhere between 900 and 1,000 people attending, and it goes for 3 days, and it's a lot of fun.
It's a great event. I've been there a few times. I think it's where actually we met for the first time. And I highly recommend it. If you were interested at all in production music, that is the place to go. Some great panels, really well attended. Your civic engagement and some of the stuff outside the industry is also really impressive and robust. You are on the board of advisors for IsraAid, which is an international crisis response and community recovery organization. You are on the council of advisors for is it Zelikow School for Jewish Nonprofit Management? Zelikow School. I was the chair of the advisory committee. I'm now not. I haven't been as involved as I used to be because I've been so busy with other things, but it's a great organization teaching management skills for people who are going into the world of nonprofit. Happens to be connected to a Jewish school, and there's a Jewish education element to it, but there are people who are not Jewish who come. It's been around, for over 50 years, and it's an important organization. And you also serve as a board member to the Bright Light Academy School, which is based in Kenya.
Yes. So this is a really interesting thing and taking a lot of my attention right now. This was funded by a friend of mine who went on a humanitarian trip to Kenya about 7 or 8 years ago, met a guy who was a teacher and who had started this little school with one or two students sitting on the dirt,
Jeez.
and she got very moved and built a relationship with him and started to fund this. And I came in about 2-3 years ago to help fund it and to help do it. We have 90 kids now. These are all kids who are disadvantaged one way or the other. Some of them are orphaned. Some of them have one parent. They all have no money. This is on Rusinga Island in Kenya. It sticks out, and it's on the eastern side of Lake Victoria. It's a beautiful part of the world, but very poor. So the entire school, everything is 100% free. And we wish we could take more students in, but we have built buildings and latrines, and we have water truck coming up every day. Now we're looking at building pipes from Lake Victoria. We give them 2 protein meals a day. We have nurses come twice a month, and they get their medicines and vaccines and get checked out. We have books. We bought computers and iPads and soccer balls and all kinds of stuff that these kids really need, and it's very moving.
It's really
amazing.
God's work, and so impressed with not only your certainly your business acumen and what you've done in 3 really different industries, but what you do for society is truly remarkable.
Oh, thank you. I will say, just make a plug, it's brightlightkenya.org. So if anybody feels like making a donation, there's a donate button on there. It doesn't have to be a lot. Every little bit helps. Of course, we'll take the bigger pays, but anything will help. And so if whoever is inclined, would love it if anybody could, get there and donate a little bit.
And I believe you have 2 sons who are both DJs, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And they were just in Japan at the World's Fair. Am I getting that right?
Yep, they call it the World Expo now, and this was the Osaka World Expo. They were chosen as one of 2, in their case, of the artists who would play and perform at the American Pavilion at the Osaka World Expo. And they play together. They're brothers, but they play together, and their names are Sasha and Max Taylor, but they go under the artist name of Sosh and Mosh, Sosh and Mosh. They are electronic music producers and writers and DJs. So if anybody is inclined to check out Sosh Mosh or Sosh and Mosh, I forget how exactly it's listed, but I will get you the link on Spotify and Instagram and SoundCloud. That would be great. I will make another plug for them. They have a business called Groove Factory where they produce their own shows. Sometimes they'll perform, sometimes they bring in other DJs. Think of a rave with art. So they have a 10,000 square foot warehouse in Santa Monica, 7th in Colorado, and they rent it out for photo shoots and video shoots. Right now it's being rented out for an independent feature film by a famous actor, but I won't say the name. They actually had, before the Super Bowl, Derek Lamar and Timothy Chalamet came over and were being interviewed by ESPN in the space, so that was very cool.
But incredible.
Once or twice a month, they produce a Groove Factory show, and it's a rave, and it's with incredible music and art installations, and they'll usually get anywhere between 700 and 800 people a night.
Oh, I love that. I had no idea.
Of fun. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. We'll include that in the show notes as well. And so obviously your boys are artistic and very successful musicians and DJs. And then your wife is also artistic. She's an author, right?
She is an author, writer, and a speech writer. So she wrote a lot of speeches, thousands of speeches over the years ago for people like Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte and others. She was in politics. She worked in the Clinton administration. And she then went to be, I may be getting the sequence of things wrong, but she was the writer-producer of Nightline with Ted Koppel for a number of years on ABC. And then she ultimately decided to come out to LA and be a TV writer. She also does write speeches and articles. She just had a big article in New York Magazine called Somebody Call Sean Penn. And it's a very interesting story that I think I might have told you over dinner.
You did.
Involving Sean Penn. We encourage everybody to read it. It's a fun read and fascinating story. She's been on about 10 different TV shows and has a couple of different things that she's working on right now, as well as some speeches and another article and ghostwriting a book for somebody. So she's very busy. Her name is Linda Burston, for those who are interested.
Being at your dinner table must be truly fascinating with all the creativity that emanates from your family. I would just love to be part of some of those conversations. You and I got to have dinner a couple months ago, and I could only imagine having the rest of the Taylor family and in talking with you all.
Well, really, you're formally invited over. I will do it.
I would love that. One last bonus question. What would be a piece of advice that you could share that your mentors, someone that has taught you that you've looked up to, that you would like to pass on?
I think that, if we're talking about people who are on the creative side, like a songwriter or composer who wants to get into the library business, I would say try to figure out what it is that is unique to you. What is it that you are bringing? We have a lot of music, we have a lot of composers, but we're always looking for people with their own voice, their own interpretation of what something means. And so I think you need to come with that. So for that part of the business, I think that is a sine qua non. Without that, don't bother, right? I also advise people, when I'm approached by a composer, I'll say, what kind of music do you do? And there have been times when somebody has said, oh, I can do anything. Wrong answer. So better to focus, because nobody can do everything equally well. So that's another piece of advice that I give people. And I think follow your heart, follow what you love. But I also think that, it's easy to follow your passion, follow your bliss, like Joseph Campbell said, but that may or may not take you where you need to go. It may not allow you to make a living. So we have to live practically speaking. So I think that there's another element that I actually was something that my son said to me a couple of weeks ago when we were talking, that somebody said to him that he's been really thinking about, which I think is actually quite interesting. It's follow your toolkit. Like, what's your toolkit? What are the things that you're good at, or what do you want to become good at? But if you can take the toolkit that you do have and figure out how to utilize that, what are the industries or areas that you can apply your skills to? So if you take that and passion, that's a great combination, but don't ignore what are the things that you're actually good at or want to spend the time to become good at, because ultimately the skill sets, the toolkit will allow you to be able to perform well in those areas that you choose.
Love that advice. Really have enjoyed getting to know you, and we can't wait to spend some more time. Adam, thank you for taking the time to be on the show today. It truly means a lot. Thanks for everything that you do for the production music business and obviously everything you do for APM.
Well, thank you, Chachi. It's great to talk. I really appreciate it. It's been fun, and I really appreciate the opportunity to work with you and your team. It's really been amazing. So I thank you for all of that, and looking forward to more stuff to do together.
Thanks for listening to Chachi Loves Everybody. If you like the show, we hope you'll leave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends. Make sure to follow on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This has been a Benztown McVeigh podcast production. Hosted and researched by Dave Chachi Dennis. Engineered by Darren Silva. Produced and edited by Jake Urbanik. Show coordinator Suzanne Aksu and Robbie Gessel.